This is International Master Eric Kislik, and today we'll be looking at the game Karjakin Kramnik, which was played in round 9 in Berlin in the Candidates Tournament. This was a rather disappointing game for Kramnik, but I will say in his defense that he tried to play the opening in a principled way when Karjakin advanced with h4, which was a surprising idea in the opening. Kramnik did try to play principally by striking back in the center. The only problem was he just wasted too much tempi with his queen. So let's go through this. So this one went c4, e6. So Kramnik illustrated that he wanted to play his Semi-Tarrasch against c4, and he wanted to play it against d4 as well. Basically, he had one opening that he wanted to play against everything in this tournament, and admittedly, the results have not been very good. And people just seem to surprise him with new ways of playing that he just was not expecting. So c takes d5, knight takes d5, e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3, c5. So here, generally, knight f3 is played, then black goes c takes d4, c takes d4, bishop b4 check, and there's a very long main line. Nowadays, people have been playing rook b1 more and more often in high-level chess, to sort of keep a bit more tension in the position, to keep more pieces on the board, to make things more difficult for black to play. So after bishop to e7, white just goes knight f3, castle, and the new idea played by Karjakin was h4. This actually had a pretty deep idea behind it. One of the ideas, which I think was not pointed out by the commentators, at least the ones I listened to, is that white wants to go e5 and then bishop d3, and he can build up an attack against h7, a Greek gift sacrifice on h7 idea pretty quickly. He can also prepare the attack with rook h3, so black does need to strike back rather quickly. My idea for black was just to go c takes d4, c takes d4, as played in the game. That was good. And then now to just go b6. So after b6, bishop d3, bishop b7, I was looking at variations like bishop b2, knight c6, and then trying to get counterplay this way. And I was thinking that this position actually looked like a pretty decent way to get counterplay, and it's not going to be easy to attack black's king after, for instance, e5, h6. So white will not have an easy time getting at black's king. So that's what I was thinking would be best under these circumstances. Knight c6 was a perfectly good move. I can't really argue with that. I was just pointing out b6 would be a slight preference for me, so h5 was played. So now white has ideas of pushing ahead with h6. He also has ideas of playing bishop b5, and in some cases trying to damage black's pawn structure. So, for instance, if h6, white can play bishop to b5, and here, even if a6, which is perfectly fine for black, take, let's say if knight e5, black can actually just go bishop d6. For instance, if castles, we can go c5. So actually, most likely, Karjakin's line was just objectively equal. And I don't think that he was playing this as any kind of bluff. I think this was just kind of normal opening preparation. He prepares a variation, he has a couple of interesting ideas, and he's kind of seeing if he can catch Kramnik a little bit off guard. And he did, because Kramnik played the move f5, which in some sense seems like a typical move to strike back against the e4 pawn. But what you have to be aware of here is that look at the weaknesses that are created now. Now the e5 pawn cannot be defended, the e5 square cannot be defended by a pawn, and the e6 pawn is a backward pawn, plus the c8 bishop just has some long-term difficulties coming into play. So let's take a look at the play that was forced. Takes, and now queen a5 check, bishop d2, queen takes f5. And presumably Kramnik was relying on this, but after bishop c3, he may have been shocked by the fact that bishop d3 becomes an immediate threat. So he struggled to find something here. I thought that his best chance was to go queen e4 check, bishop e2, b5, castle, b4 to try to get some quick counterplay this way. White is still better here because of black's worse pawn structure, but still I think this would have been the best way to play. So let's take a look at what happened. h6 was played, bishop d3, queen g4, and he also may have underestimated just how strong it was for white to put the king on f1, although this didn't look very difficult for Karjakin to play. So after bishop f6, for instance, white can go queen c2 and continue with rook e1, which also looks very, very good for white. The problem is black's pawn structure is so bad, he's not really able to do much here. So Well, he tried to go e5, and again, personally, I don't blame Kramnik that much for this loss. Much unlike a lot of the other games in the tournament, I try to be very objective about assessing the mistakes that were made and whether the play was principled or whether the play was simply based on a large blunder or a large oversight of some kind. But the thing about Kramnik's mistakes in this game is that he landed in a lost position by actually playing kind of quote-unquote by the rules, as Botvinnik would have said, in the sense that he played the move f5 to strike back against a flank attack with counterplay in the center. And he also tried here again to counter king f1 with e5, essentially arguing, well, I have a lead in development, so I should try to open up the game. So he did have some kind of principles, at least he was playing by, and unfortunately it just did not work out. He had to play h6 on move 11 or queen e4 check on move 14, and when he missed those two opportunities, his position really started to slip away. So let's go through this. So d5 was played, and now e4. So I assume that he just just simply miscalculated this, or maybe he just thought, well, we're getting some complications and maybe these will work out in my favor. So d takes c6 was played, e takes f3, g takes f3. So now, so there are two options. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to go queen takes f3, takes, king e2. I'm pretty sure he did not want to play this because it basically looked like he was going to end up either down the exchange or down a pawn. And I can just imagine that didn't look very appealing to him. So he went rook takes f3. And now I had a very strong idea, which I think actually totally refutes all of black's play immediately, and that is just to simply go c takes b7, bishop takes b7, and then just take the bishop. And the point here, here's the point, rook f7, take, rook a f8, and now the key point, which I think is fairly hard to see, is that we can just go queen e4. That's the key move. Because now it looks like he's getting an attack, but he checks. He just has one check. We go king e1. And this is very nice when you look at it. Just the fact that everything is safe around white's king, even though it's a kind of position where a lot of players would see ghosts. They would say, oh, my king is very exposed. I really don't want to play this. But this is just a very calm appraisal of white's king position and really realizing, well, we're actually totally safe. So let's take a look at that again. C takes b7, bishop takes b7, queen b3 check. It's quite a beautiful way to simply refute the attack there. So bishop e2 was also quite interesting. Rook takes. Basically, he was forced, so he had no choice. Takes, bishop c5 check. So keep in mind, he's basically down a rook and going for the attack. King f1, queen f4 check, bishop f3. Okay. So b takes c6 was played. And what I was thinking of was to go bishop e6 with the idea of bishop c4 check. Here the lines are very forcing, so I was thinking if c takes b7, bishop c4 check, king to g2, so we're just directly checking the king. We have to go for checks, because if we don't, we're just going to lose with black. So queen g5 check, bishop g4, bishop d5 check, king h3, queen e3 check. So this seems like it's a very dangerous check, but we have a fantastic move for white, which is queen f3. I love this move. We sacrifice our queen in a really awesome way. And the point is, yes, we're sacrificing our queen, but we're going to play b8 queen check on the next move. So after bishop takes f3, we have b8 queen check, takes, and now after bishop f8, which is forced. So after bishop, he can't go king h7 because of bishop f5 check. So after bishop f8, takes. My whole idea was to go rook f1. And then, let's say queen e4 takes, king g8, to try to play out this position with rook and two bishops versus queen and pawn. I think white has very good winning chances. I checked it with the computer. It seemed to conclude that probably with perfect play, black would draw. But it's certainly a different issue playing it over the board. The bishops can be very, very powerful in practice. It's just very hard to figure out exactly where to put your king and queen when trying to coordinate against those pieces. So black actually had a very good chance here to escape with bishop e6 objectively, although over the board I think that black would have faced tremendous problems. So let's see what happened here. B takes c6. Well, he just got very scared of the c-pawn. bishop e1. So he tries to move the bishop over to defend. Bishop e6, so he's trying to bring the bishop in with ideas, well, he has ideas of bringing the rook in and of bringing the bishop into c4. So bishop h4 was quite a nice move, and now rook to f8, and he went king to g2. So he's actually consolidated very nicely with some subtle moves. And one idea is, let's say if bishop to d6, white can play the nice consolidating move, rook to b3. And white is actually happy to sacrifice the exchange here because it makes his defense easier by giving black basically no attacking pieces. So we just go queen e2, and then we can go queen e4, for instance. And now the attack has basically all but evaporated. So in the actual game, king h8 was played. This was reasonable. It was a little bit slow, but I think he was just trying to catch Karjakin and see what he would do. I think bishop g3, queen g5, rook e1 would have been easier. For instance, if here we could just take and go queen e2, and white's king is perfectly safe, so black is definitely losing there. In any case, he went rook c1. Karjakin basically coordinated his pieces really beautifully here. Rook to f5, rook to c3, and because of the fact that Karjakin coordinated his pieces so well here, that's one of the reasons why I'm not so critical of Kramnik's play here. So it's one of those things where it's really very easy to just look at the computer or just, look at some commentary and go, how could Kramnik have played those moves f5 and e5? How could he have played b takes c6? Well, to me, these are all pretty understandable. I mean, we saw in the case of f5, he wanted to strike back at the center. e5, he wanted to use his lead in development. b takes c6, he probably just slightly miscalculated a variation and thought the b pawn was too strong. So I can understand why he made those moves, and I think even for a 2800 player, these are the types of errors that are made. Nobody plays perfectly, so they have to make some errors, and these are the kinds of errors that might cost players games. So for instance, if rook to e5 was played here, we can go rook d3, check, takes. Here I have another beautiful move. And the point is, if king f1, there's bishop h3 check. And notice the bishop can't be taken because we don't want to blunder into mate here with queen f2 mate. So be very careful you don't fall for that. That's a pretty nasty mate. But we have the beautiful move bishop to g4. This is fantastic. So we are able to sacrifice our bishop because it gets pieces off the board. So here we're up 2 exchanges, and after rook g3, bishop takes d1, we have rook takes g5 and rook takes d1. And then after rook d7, we reach a 1 endgame. So that's a pretty nice way to win this position. Pretty beautiful way to conclude the game with that bishop to g4 move. So it's nice looking over this game because there are some really beautiful moves in here, as we saw, like the queen f3 move and one of the previous variations, in this bishop g4 move. Really beautiful defensive play and excellent piece coordination by Karjakin. He deserves all the credit for that. So Kramnik went for rook d5. He sacrificed the other rook here. And bishop takes d5, bishop takes d5 check, rook f3, queen g4 check. He just said bishop d3, bishop g3, bishop d6, rook h3. So he uses his rooks perfectly to shield his king and keep everything protected. Bishop e7, queen to e2. He's doing an excellent job of consolidating king h7, queen to c2 check, and queen f2 doesn't really change anything. So bishop e4, okay, you win queen f2. a5, a4, c5, rook h1. So now this rook is free. So after bishop f6, he just went rook e1. He was able to use that rook more effectively than on h3. So after bishop c6, he goes rook e3. This is just really beautiful piece coordination by Karjakin. So if queen takes h5, white can go queen e2, queen g6, queen d3, and then king f2. So that looks pretty convincing as a simple win for white. So c4 was played, queen e2, queen takes h5, yeah, queen takes c4. Now if bishop d5, we can just check, and just go king f2 and break the pin. So in the game, bishop d7 was played. Black basically gave up on his hopes of playing for tricks, and white played rook d3 and black resigned. He could play rook b3. He has many winning moves here. But the point I wanted to make about this game is that Kramnik tried to give himself the best practical chances. He tried to play actively, and I'm pretty sure he judged this game as a must-win game. So He tried his best to fight against Karjakin, put him under the maximum amount of pressure, and unfortunately he failed at that. I mean, there were some pretty amazing moves missed by both players, but I can definitely empathize with some of his moves. So what I would say is that Kramnik had a couple games in the tournament where he just flat out blundered. He flat out made big, clear blunders. Although in this game, the mistakes were a bit more subtle and understandable. So feel a bit sorry for the guy, but tremendous play by Karjakin. Subscribe for more.